Hello, welcome back to CBC in London. So my name is Slavomir Jijula. I'm technical systems engineer, and welcome back. So as you can slowly get an idea about the solutions or systems you can see in CBC, as mentioned earlier, actually, so it's focusing on the application side. So you will see the individual components actually so around those applications. Now you see the same adjustable rack, but I will be talking actually so more about the fiber, high density fiber in a data center. So high density application in a data center. So just a quick introduction. So the growing data rates and the number of devices actually so connected in the world actually so are requiring a lot of or more cables coming into the data center. So it will be either more cables or more fibers in single cables. And this is what will be the kind of a starting point actually so for this session. And as an example, actually, I will show you the kind of an end-to-end application or end-to-end solution actually so that Panjit can help you with. And there are three things actually so to keep in mind when talking about the high density fiber application is the serviceability, manageability, and scalability actually. So, and I hope that you get a good idea how with Panjit system you can achieve this. So, starting with incoming cable or the backbone cable. So, and this is, let's say, an excellent example to show you also the capability from the previous sessions on the adjustable rack. So, the incoming cable tied to a tie of brackets is coming into our data center. This could be a meet-me room, could be also a data center floor space, depends on the size, application, location. So usually this will be high count fiber. So, and this is the starting point. So the high count fiber actually, so we offering, so is starting, let's say, with 144 fibers, go up to 288, can go up to 864 fibers. Okay, so you can choose actually. So, but what happens then is you need to break it out to more manageable quantities, and either you're using some kind of breakout boxes, or like in this application, our HD fusion splicing enclosure. So the entering actually, so the HD fusion splicing enclosure is quite safe. There is a number of accessories actually so that can protect the cables quite safely. And once the cable is inside, let me rotate the cabinet. Once the cable is inside, you can start managing the cables. You can break it out. And again, so the breaking out is not just to reduce, let's say, the quantity of the fibers to make it more manageable, but also eventually to transition to a different type of cable that might be required in a data center application. For instance, different CPR rating. Okay, so let me take off the cover from the enclosure, and let me slice out the tray, and you get the idea actually. So how this particular enclosure is built and how scalable and flexible actually so it is. So it takes 4 RU spaces actually. So depending on the requirement, you can start with single trays. So single trays can handle, let's say, 48 fibers, but the entire enclosure can handle quantities of 576 fibers, depending, so on the needs. So as an example, so I keep the cover in hand. So, but the clever design again, so serviceability, manageability. Okay, so is to use the cover as a working surface, and it works very well. Okay, so the design is supporting it. And here, as an example, I have already spliced tray with few fiber cords. Okay, so and you can nicely fit the tray on the working surface, remove the cover, and start working and adding more fusion splicing into the tray. So once you finish this, okay, so you put the cover back on the tray, position that back into the enclosure, into the required slot. The labeling sheet actually, so you can make a note of the change or addition and you can carry on with work. You always use this hook and loop cable tie or strap, actually, so to protect the trays. And again, so you can start with single tray. It can expand up to 12 trays, okay, so depending on the needs. I can take off the cover now. I can slice it back, okay, so and notice also the cable management inside. There's enough space for a lot of cables, okay, so that will come in, but also will go out, okay, so because it's not just incoming cable, there will be also outgoing cable, which I will show you later how it works. So, but this is the fusion splicing enclosure that actually allows you to break out the high count fiber into more manageable quantity. So I'm putting this back on, closing the cover to protect my trays, using the key in a locking position. And again, serviceability in mind. I show you actually so the rear side of this enclosure. And keep in mind, again, serviceability or single technician, okay? So that will work on that system. So he can access that enclosure from both sides, front and rear. The rear side has similar cover. You can open that cover the same way as the front one. I can take the cover in the hand for a second. I can slice out the tray and can access the same trays as I did in the front. So I can work for both sides. And obviously, I can use also the cover as a working surface. Here you go. And I can work from the front or from the rear. So single technician can work around it very comfortably. Okay, so and again, cables are well protected. There's enough space to handle the content of cable that has stretched the enclosure has been designed for. Again, so I'm closing the cover, protecting the trays, and I'm done with fusion splicing. Now, once we have done fusion splicing, we transition to different types of cables. We can handle it. We deal with distribution cables now, and this distribution cable can be can go to a number of systems like patch panels, maybe end devices, depending on the requirements. So in this application here, I'm showing you a patch system, actually, so that we call it HD Flex, that I will be presenting now as the next stage of the end-to-end solution. HD Flex, once it arrives, actually, so from the rear side, it's connected to a cassettes. So the HD Flex contains number of components. So the first one is the enclosure. The enclosure comes in different sizes, starting with 1 RU, 2 RU, 4 RUs, depending on the capacity required. Can be fitted with a number of different cassettes. I will demonstrate you, show you in a second actually, so how the cassette looks like and what type of cassettes you can use. But in general, we're talking about this kind of a breakout cassette. So MPO to LC, and you can have multiple scenarios what type of cassettes you use. So either use 4-port duplex LC, 6 ports or 12 ports cassettes. So I will show you in a second. So, but I want to focus first on the enclosure. So enclosure actually so includes number of trays. And one thing to remember is that 3 trays per 1 rack unit. So each tray can accommodate up to 24 duplex LC connectors. I will be showing you this. Okay, so, and this tray in this HD Flex enclosure has number of positions. So the first one, we call it a home, that actually so allows to protect the cables connectors, actually. So the second one is the service position that allows you to make the connections, changes. And then if you want to work on the cassettes, remove, replace cassettes, you can put this to the fully extended position and working on those cassettes. Okay, so it's quite comfortable. As you can see, that enclosure includes also some cable management capabilities that can handle all the capacity comfortably and securely. And you can direct the cables, in this example, to a vertical cable manager, or if you have a cabinet, you will have cable organizers in the cabinets. And this is how you handle it, let's say, from the front. Okay, so now in terms of the trays, as I mentioned, 3 trays per 1 rack unit. Depending on how many circuits you may have redundant circuits, and to minimize the risk of any failure, human error, occurs quite often, we can actually split the tray to make the risk of damaging the cable or adjacent circuits minimal. So, and here, this is, let's say, considering one circuit, all the cables going to one side. But in the other example here, I have a tray where I'm showing two circuits. The cables actually are directed to different paths, actually, so to minimize the risk. And if I want to split the tray, I just remove the locking pin, and I can just focus on single tray, and the adjacent circuit will be not involved, and the risk of damaging any cable has been minimized. If I want to make it connection back, I just fit the pin back into the position. And now I have, again, single tray, again, so depending on the application. Now, if I stick for a moment on this example, so here this is the design using 6 LC duplex ports. We have 4 of those cassettes. Okay, so there is a obviously scenario also where you can fit 6 4-port cassettes, or like here, for instance. Okay, so this is an example where actually I'm able to position 4-port cassettes into the enclosure just by adding additional brackets, mounting brackets, or 12-port cassettes that are a little bit larger. And again, so the deployment is slightly, let me take this out. Deployment is slightly different, but this is, let's say, just different handling of the connectivity. Again, so this is just showing you the flexibility, manageability, so, and adaptation to actually so the requirements and needs in the data center. Now, this was the enclosure actually, so I was showing you, which handles, let's say, the connection. There is the other option where actually, so probably the best ideal application would be in the less dynamic environment where there's not much patching happening. This is called high HD Flex patch panels. Here we still handle the same cassettes, but there are no trays. You cannot extract those trays, okay? So, and you still can handle the cables either by using the horizontal cable manager, like shown here, or you can still attach optional front cover that can handle the cables similarly to HD Flex enclosure. Okay, so there are 2 options again, so depending on the applications. And just paying attention to the details and the designs, and again, having in mind the serviceability and manageability of high density. So using a patch codes makes also a huge difference. Okay, so type of a patch code, so type of a connectors. Here I'm showing you example of Uniboot LC connector that is very easy to work with and can be, I mean, there is a push-pull technology used, but also you have the pin that helps you actually so to reach out to the right port in your patch panel. Also to change the polarity is very extremely easy. If I rotate it back, you see how the cable is handled on the rear side. But actually, so we're using NPO connectors. And if you think about connecting, let's say, the cassettes or patch panels between different racks, different rows, we can provide and deliver you also the trunks, harnesses that are actually so made for specific lengths. So, and connectors we're talking about, the PAN NPO, PANJIT NPO connector is very versatile, very flexible. Changing polarities, gender is very easy so to work with. So again, serviceability, manageability, scalability here is very well visible. In terms of supporting cables, amount of cables, the weights, there is a number of options. Okay, so brackets, additional covers if required. Okay, so this is just example. Okay, so how this could be applied. And again, so attached to a type of bracket in this example in this adjustable rack. But again, so this could go to either vertical cable organizers or in other cable managers in cabinets. So question now is, what if we don't have rack? Okay, so we are in a colocation environment and we require some kind of a consolidation point or or distribution, okay, so of the cables. And we don't have the rack availability, okay, so because we are, for instance, in a co-location environment. So perfect example is this in-floor high-density solution, so which is installed in the raised floor application. Under the raised floor, can be covered with single cover. Locking system is with the key, actually, so it's locked with the key, or can be using a dual door cover, which can help to distinguish the circuit A, circuit B, depending on the redundancy and the requirements, and you can focus on one or the other. You will have two cassettes, actually, so two trays, actually, so you will be able to work with. And imagine this will be installed under the raised floor. So the operation is slightly different like this enclosures, but you still operate with the familiar system, which is HD Flex cassettes. If I work on the front side, I can lift and rotate the tray to access the front side. And as you can see here, there is a number of connections. And I can use, as mentioned, the same cassettes as in HD Flex enclosure I showed you earlier. And again, so in different configurations. If you want to access the rear side because you are just connecting the distribution cable, you lift this and rotate the other way. And I can have full access to it. So the cassettes in all the HD Flex systems can be accessed from the front and from the rear. You can remove it also from the rear side quite comfortably. There is a labeling obviously also attached that you can make the changes or note about the changes and change the labels if needed. And again, very compact solution, high capacity enclosure. Accessing the enclosure under the floor is quite flexible. You have the entrances from all sides, so 360 degrees. So you can separate the incoming cable from outgoing cables. Brilliant tool. Enough space, also spool inside for extra slack of cables if needed. And brilliant system for specifically consolidation points, collocation applications. So that's, that will be it actually so from this session. HD Flex end-to-end solution. And I will be, if you have any more questions about those individual components or the entire solution, please reach out to our specialists actually, so via the chat, or please talk to us directly, or go to punji.com. And if there are any questions, there is one question. Yes, there is one question. So the one question we have is about, about the cassettes. So if the cassettes support only LC connectors, so it's MPO breakout to LC, the answer is, actually the question is quite good. So I don't have it on my display, but actually so there is an option for our new connectors actually, so which is called CS. And this connector actually so allows to extend the capacity even greater, so by 33% or 50%. So if we're talking about single 1 RU, instead of handling 144 fibers, because this is the typical LC application or using LC connectors, this is the capacity, 177 fibers, sorry, 144 fibers. You could actually so achieve with the CS connectors 192 or even 216 ports density on a single in a single rack unit. So we do have those cassettes. I don't have them on the display, but please go to our punji.com, talk to us, and we'll be happy to talk to you about that. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the sessions.